Alrighty, good morning, Miss Cricket Wampler. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here. I just feel pumped. How are you guys?
We're great. We are so happy to have you here at Ponitz. Our first question has to do with your nickname. How did you get the nickname Cricket?
Ooh, good question. Okay, so there are a couple different backstories, I feel like. My full name is Christina, that's my truth. But I think it was on a TV show, actually. There was a Christine that went by Cricket. So when my parents named me Christina, they just Christina's kind of long, you're gonna have some sort of Chrissy, something's gonna go on. My dad's name's Chris, that's off limits, So they started calling me Cricket or Crick or Cricky, and then it just kind of stuck. So when I started acting, it just kind of everyone was kind of already calling me that all the time anyway. So I was like, I guess I'll just put that as everything and be Cricket Wampler for the most part. So yeah.
Makes sense. Cricket Wampler has done a lot in her lifetime. So can't blame her. Speaking of your parents, I know they played a big role in the move to LA and making sure that you got noticed for your talents. What was all that like, moving from here clear across the country? And how old were you?
Good question. So my siblings started acting before I did. I'm the youngest. So my older siblings started acting locally. I think they were taking classes in Vandalia. And then they started going back and forth. Guys, I'm so sorry that an alarm just went off. I only have one alarm set. Anyway, so they started going back and forth to LA, but I was still too shy because I was about 8 years old, 7 or 8 at this point. And then basically, we started going back and forth, and then once we started booking a couple commercials, we were like, okay, this is more serious than it's kind of happening. Everyone was always like, oh, is anything really happening out there? For a while it wasn't, it's hit or miss. So then we finally decided to move after my 4th grade year, and I'm very lucky that my parents, they were both basically born and raised totally in the Dayton area, but even specifically Tip City. So everyone was super shocked when they left because we were a big sports team family and all that stuff. So everyone was very shocked when we left, but they were like, that's what made sense. You guys all wanted to do it. They said they would not have done it if all 3 of us weren't so we want to do it, which, 3 siblings in acting's kind of rare, but we love it. And so we just really haven't thought about it since, but we're very glad that both of our parents were on board because my dad's just an accountant. So he had a job in Ohio, and then he had to find a job, but he was here a little bit too. He stayed in Ohio, and then we went to LA, and then he finally joined us. So it was kind of a big process, but I'm really grateful my parents let us have it.
Now, was there any pressure, what with Philip and Carrie both being child actors as well?
Pressure, that's an interesting word to use. I don't know, there was. I think also it was just fun. I don't know how to describe it. There definitely was pressure behind it, but not from our parents or anything. There was no rush. I feel like there was always, I don't know, a lot of kids have pressureful parents, and that's definitely would be stressful. I hated seeing stress on my friends or my peers. I was always like, that's really stressful. But my parents, I did feel like there was no hurry. I think they just trusted our ability, and they were like, in due time, whatever, have fun, da-da-da. So I think it was definitely, I was nervous to start when they started. I was too shy at first, like I said, but then I ended up actually, I'm gonna brag for a second. I booked the first commercial. So they were like, well, you just came in and you just booked the commercial. But the younger you are, the easier it is. So it really was just that. But yeah, then once we started working, and then there have been stints where I didn't work for 5 years. It totally just depends, but now we all kind of work here and there and have a great time with it, so yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing for all 3 of you to be in the industry.
Yes, it's very fun. And I'm glad we're still all in it, because, sometimes people fizzle out, but we're still chilling.
When you first made the move to LA, how many auditions do you think you did?
Oh my gosh, we've thought about this because between commercials and having the two siblings, we think definitely, well, there were some days where we'd have 7 auditions a day, not each, but all of us, and you're all over LA for these auditions. You're 3 hours this direction, 1 hour this direction, 30 minutes that direction. So anyway, it's been hectic. If I had to guess, I would guess 1,000, I don't know, a crazy amount, because commercials especially, you can have 3 in one day, especially when you're younger, whatever. So it's been an insane thing. And so that's why it's literally just so much rejection. Acting is complete rejection all the time. And so I think sometimes I'm almost too chill with rejection. I'm like, oh, you don't like me? Okay. But it just takes one to change your life in a different way. So I think just knowing that one is out there, inevitably it's gonna happen at some point. But yes, definitely hundreds, if not thousands of auditions. Yes.
Alrighty, speaking of your big break, what was it like when you found out that you were casted into Big Shot?
Okay, so I was actually it was on a Sunday, which you never hear anything like that on a Sunday. So it was a Sunday. It was a very drawn out process to begin with, the audition process, and then the callback and testing and all that. And because we play basketball on the show, we also had a basketball test before we could be on the show to make sure that we were all right, or at least able to learn. Some of the girls played, some of them didn't. But anyway, so I was at this wedding, or I was headed to this wedding, and I got a call from my managers, and I was like, oh no. Like, if you're gonna hear at a weird time, a lot of times it is a no. Like, they just wanna let you know as soon as possible so you're not still thinking about it, you know? Because obviously, when you're that close, you're definitely like thinking about it constantly, because like your life's either gonna change or it's not. And so when I got the call, I literally was like so shocked because it was a Sunday and whatever. So I literally was just so happy, and then I immediately called one of the girls that I already knew who had booked it before me. And so I called her, and we were like screaming on the phone together and just so excited. And then I had literally the best time at this wedding I got to go to with it was a very small wedding, but we just all had so much fun. It was such a great day for so many reasons. But yeah, I just couldn't believe it. And I think my family was just like, out of all the years we've been acting, this was our first series regular for any of like my siblings or I. So I think just finally being like, wow, all of it like paid off and something's like really happening. Obviously they've done cool stuff too, but it's just different. It was a first, so it was really exciting for all of us.
So you played basketball in Big Shot, and your dad used to play basketball too, right?
Yes, so he played at Tippecanoe High School, and then he played at Wright State, and then he coached at Tippecanoe High School for a little bit. So yes, basketball is definitely a big part of my life, my family. And then I have cousins who play, one played at Michigan State and just graduated a couple years ago, and one plays at Ohio State now. So definitely a lot of basketball around me, yes.
So did he coach you through some of those tricks that you guys were doing in the movie?
So yes and no. When I found out, I think it was for the callback, I was already like, hey Dad, like I think I should start practicing a little bit more. I'd played like my 5th grade year. I played like 1 year of basketball. And of course, having my dad being a basketball player, we would like go out and shoot hoops or whatever growing up, but I never like took it that seriously. So I was like, hey Dad, you wanna like come with me and help me? So he was like boot camp style basically, and I practiced with him. Once we got cast, I still trained with him occasionally, or we would just go out and shoot hoops. He'd be my little rebounder, if you will, but we did have a trainer that like kind of came in to train us and coordinate it all. So yes, but I still do practice with him too, because it's just fun, and he'll be a little, our coordinator's pretty hard on us, but like, your dad will really, really dig in.
So what's it like working on a show where you're surrounded by celebrities like John Stamos and Yvette Brown? What is it like being around those people and working with them?
I think it definitely depends on the person. I went into it basically being mega fans of both John and Yvette. I was like, holy cow, I've got Uncle Jesse, I've got Helen from Drake and Josh. So it was just really cool, and you never know how someone's gonna be. It definitely is like, iffy, you just kind of have to feel it out and definitely take their kind of cues, but both of them are just very warm, open people. Yvette is literally just like sunshine. So she was so nice, and she's so much fun to work with because she just is like so welcoming. You're nervous, whatever, and she's just like, give me a hug. She's from Ohio as well. She's from the Cleveland area. So we just like, yeah, she's just so sweet and so welcoming. And then John, you just don't really know what to expect, especially like everyone calls him he is our #1 cast member. He's just first on the call sheet. So like he's our #1, which sounds so dramatic, but it's just how they word it. So, but everyone's always like, I don't know if you guys realize how lucky you are to have him as a #1, because he's just like, he just sets such a good tone for all of us when we're working. And I have to say, coming into it as an Uncle Jesse fan, I don't think of him as Uncle Jesse as much as I thought. And I think I'm gonna give props to his acting ability on that, because I'm like, no, you're coach right now. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not picturing Uncle Jesse. Occasionally he'll do something that I'm like, that was a little Uncle Jesse, but not always. So I think he does a pretty good job with it. And he's just a very, like I said, warm, and he just wants us to all be having a great time. So he's like, what are you doing? Oh, da, da, da. Yeah, he's just a great time.
So how did you get a big star like him to get into TikTok?
Okay, so I did not get him into TikTok, but I just basically, Tiana is one of the girls on the show, she plays Destiny, and she's one of my close friends, and we just love making TikToks. I mean, I wasn't into TikTok actually at first, and now I'm like the most into TikTok, because I'm just like, I think the dances are fun, I think it's funny, whatever. But we were just making TikToks one day, and he walked out, and he thought it was so funny, so all of a sudden he's in the background of our TikTok dancing around, and then since then he's been like, we should make more TikToks. And I'm like, okay, but like, do you know any of the dances? And he's like, well, no. And I'm like, well, do you have an idea? And he's like, not at all. And I'm like, John, what do you want to make? Like, what are you talking about? So he's very like, he wants to like do it, but he doesn't know what to do. He's like, you guys got to tell me what to do. And we're like, we don't know what we want you to do. So anyway, but he'll dance around with us. He's definitely always trying to be like, he thinks it's funny. So we have a good time with it.
Now, I remember when we were talking about casting, you mentioned there being a lot of rejection, and we wanted to know, what is the biggest role that you almost had, and what did you learn from missing it?
There are a lot, but, and also I feel like in acting, you always have that one person that just gets your roles and you're like, we both tested and you got it. So testing is honestly like the closest, there is moving testing and there's TV testing. I've TV tested maybe like 4 or 5 times. And so when I was testing for Big Shot, my friend London was actually in LA visiting me, and I got the call that I was testing, and that's like the last step. So I got really excited, but I was like, she won't like, if I don't get this, she'll never realize how close I was. And if I do get it, then she will realize how, like, you know what I mean? You hear testing and you just don't know. So just, that's kind of like, yeah, the last step. So I've tested only a handful of times for movies or for TV shows, and then movies is a little bit different. One of them, okay, Spy Kids 4 was probably a big one because I was actually in Ohio at the time and had to go back to do like the last callback round. And it was set up very scarily, I would say, because it was just a bunch of girls and like boys, the same, like all around that age, and you know, you're playing. I was playing a twin with a boy, so they were just like pulling you in, mixing. That's what they call a mix and match, when they're just bringing y'all in and they're like, okay, you with you, you with you. And I just remember like Bailey Madison being there, who I was like a big fan of, so I was like, oh my gosh, you're here. And Rowan Blanchard was there, but I don't want to say she wasn't anyone at the time. I didn't know her as from anything at the time. So yeah, it was just like, but then they just were like, you guys can go, like you can go, you can go, you can. And all of a sudden everyone's just like leaving throughout the whole day, and you're just like, okay, they're still pulling me in, they're still taking me in, whatever. So finally, I think it was down to me and Rowan and then 2 boys, and they were mixing and matching us, and then they were like, you 2 can go, and it was me and actually the boy who booked it, who they sent away, and then Rowan came out and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna book it. And so anyway, I was like, okay, you're gonna book it. But anyway, so you don't normally have that kind of reaction, but I was like, okay, I think she booked it. But I walked out actually with the boy who booked it, and we were both like, I guess they booked it, like I don't really know. And so I think that one definitely, I don't know if that crushed me the most. I was still like 9, so I was still pretty young. So I think I just kind of was just happy to be there. And also, I did know obviously the Spy Kids movie, so I was like, that'd have been really cool, but you know, you can't win them all. So anyway, that one was a big one. And then Crash and Bernstein, I feel like wasn't that big of a show, but I tested for one of the main girls on that multiple times. And when you test, you don't normally test for something multiple times, and they kept bringing it. So I'm like, don't keep dragging me back into this if you don't want me. But they just never know what they want, and that's what's hard. Or, you know, 5 people like you and then 10 people don't. And you're in a giant boardroom with 30 people, and it's like there's 30 different opinions. So I think there have been plenty of things that I've been bummed about. And sometimes it's the audition that I'm like, I didn't get a call back, because it's just like the audition I'm excited about. But yeah, it's definitely lots of rejection. But it's normally you don't even hear back. You don't get a no. You just get like a nothing, radio silence. So ghosting doesn't bother me because I'm like, I'm used to hearing nothing. No, but yeah, so that's pretty much how it works out.
And what do experiences like that teach you?
Yes. I would say it just reminds me that I had been acting for 13 years before I got this one yes that really changed it. Obviously, I've had a couple less significant yeses, but I think just watching other people get their chance too, I'm like, no. I have complete faith that at some point it will be my chance. So I think just remembering also to trust your ability. It's not necessarily I was the worst actor. It's just I'm not what they pictured. I'm not what they wanted. This girl was taller. This girl's hair was darker. Like, you can't go off. You can't take it too personally. It's very hard not to. But I think just having trust in who you are and knowing your capabilities and ability, and just having to trust in that and being like, no. At some point, it will be me. They'll want me. They'll be like, actually, no, we want you. And you'll be like, wait, really? Because it's been 13 years and you haven't wanted me. So I think just remembering to keep trying, and it will work out eventually.
Now, I know that you said you played basketball a while back.
Yes.
But we do know that you are a dancer as well as an actress.
Yes, I am.
And that you taught dancing classes.
Yes.
What was that like?
I love teaching. So I have been dancing. I danced when I was like pretty little, and then I took a little bit of a break, and then I started dancing again, I think when I was 12. And almost immediately, like, one of the ladies was like, wait, can you be an assistant teacher? And I was like, sure, and I didn't think much of it. Was just a little assistant for a little bit. Then they were like, wait, can you sub? And then I started actually having classes. So I definitely just love kids, and I just love teaching. And I just feel like there's something so special about when you have such a passion for something, and then you get to teach either little kids or kids your age, you know, the same passion. It's so cool to see. And it's so fun to be like, okay, no, this one's actually gonna go, like, she really likes it. You can tell, you know, I love being able to see like, no, this one really gets it, or this one really is enjoying yourself or whatever. So it is just so fun. And I really like that it's kind of just so different than the acting thing. I love having many passions. So I think it's just super fun, and I just get so excited when my students get better, or like, I don't even know. I love choreographing. So all of that is just super fun, and very fun that it's kind of just really different than the acting, even though it's both kind of artistic, but you know, it's just something different.
And do you still dance and teach?
I do. I teach occasionally just because my schedule's a little iffy right now, but I was teaching over Corona on Zoom. And so yes, I do still teach, and I do still take A couple times a week, it just depends. Sometimes I just go into the studio to dance, even not taking a class, because I just find it like therapeutic at times, and I'm like, I just need to dance it out. So yes, but I still do dance, and it's definitely a big part of who I am and what I love to do, and just like, yeah, kind of an escape, if you will. Yes.
Now, with your love for teaching, would you ever consider teaching acting?
Ooh, okay. Acting's tricky because I tend to feel like most of the great coaches don't normally, like if you're like acting and you're in a lot of stuff, you're not normally coaching. I don't know, like it's definitely a different path that I have not really thought about. But also I feel underqualified at the moment. I'm like, oh no, if someone was like, maybe if like a kid was like, I'm going for one audition, like and I'd be like, okay, maybe. But like acting, teaching is so specific. And I feel like when I take classes, I still am learning so much. And I'm like, I did not think of that angle, or I didn't think of this. So I think I have so much more growing to do before I would ever feel like I was ready to teach. I mean, everyone's gonna bring different points and different ideas. So if I did have someone in front of me, I'd be like, wait, what about this? And it's like, they might be like, I didn't think of that. But it's just definitely a whole different beast, I would say. So it's definitely, yes, teaching dance, I'm like, okay, my capabilities, I can kind of fake it, whatever. Acting is just very specific. And so also you gotta find your right students with the right crowd of like what you have to offer. But yeah, that'd be very stressful. I would be a little bit stressed out with that. Feel that there's where the pressure comes in. I was like, I'm under pressure.
I can definitely understand that.
So are you thinking about incorporating dance into acting like you did with basketball?
Potentially, that's kind of up to the writers at this point, or, you know, depending on what roles I'm going out for. Because I have gone out for dance roles in the past. It kind of just depends though, because I would say I'm primarily an actress who loves dance, but then there are dancers who can kind of act. So it kind of just depends on what role it would be and who they're looking for and what's going on. I would love to. That's why I was excited about even Big Shot, because I was like, I get to stay in shape and be at work because I'm playing basketball so much. So I've kind of always, that was like my dream job for a long time, was to be like, if I could dance and stay in shape and do what I love while acting and also doing more of what I love, that'd be kind of like best of both worlds. So I would love to do that at some point, but it just depends when the role comes along. Yes.
Now, bouncing off of Joselyne's question, with the basketball aspect of the show, we know as directors and actors ourselves
Yes.
how many takes you do and how many shots. What is that like, and how tiring is it to do, because you do your own stunts, don't you?
Yes, we do. We've had, I think, 2 stunt people come in, but in the end, because they were just like, if the girls aren't comfortable with it, but in the end, it wasn't anything too catastrophic, so the girls ended up doing it. It is definitely a lot of takes. I think I just forget sometimes too. I'll be like, oh wow, I took the weekend, I was ready to come back, and I'm still glad I'm here, but I forgot how long this takes, and it just depends on what actors are in the scene with you. Also, we have an ensemble cast, which means there are just, you know, that many more camera angles that need to be set up, that much more coverage to do. So sometimes we work on a scene for 8 hours, like it just depends. And basketball scenes are a whole different beast in themselves. Sometimes, like the pilot, the first episode, we have a basketball game that, I don't know, maybe takes up, I don't know exactly how many minutes of the episode it takes up, but we shot for over 12 hours, 2 days in a row, just running plays, doing basketball, da-da-da. And then there was a scene where we had to do the karaoke step in the background, basically, of this one scene. We karaoke'd for 8 hours that day. So like, you just don't think about it when you're watching it, but we are like, when you watch us seem tired in a scene, if they can say like, you guys can be tired, we're like, thank goodness we can show it. Because we're acting when we're acting not tired, because we've just been doing it for so long. And then one of the recent episodes, we had a burpee scene where we're doing burpees, and like they show approximately 2 burpees, and we did burpees for like 4 hours. And with the push-up, like I was like, I am hurt. We were all so sore the next day, but you don't think about it when you're watching it. And they were like, Cricket, your face is getting so red, that's great. And I'm like, I'm not choosing this, I'm dying over here. Because they were like, that's great for the camera. And I was like, I'm just a tomato because I'm sweating. Like, this is not, they thought I did it on purpose. And I was like, I'm just dying. But yes, we definitely do a lot of takes. And sometimes I'm like, you know, it's good to change it up. You never know, because you're like, okay, they liked what I was doing. They didn't tell me not to do what I was doing, but also, do I want to give them something fresh? I think it's always an internal struggle too. And also being an active listener, when you're like, even though you've heard the lines a million trillion times, you're like, wait, I think shock scenes are the most fun. It's like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, da-da-da, this happened to them, and you're like, oh, no, are they okay? And it's like, I have to do that 700 more times now, but like, or like tearing up, then you got to do it 700 times. So it's like, fun times though. But that's the fun of it. You know, you know that when you sign up, you're like, okay, we're gonna have to but being an active listener, I feel like is an important one, because it's like, you're here, especially if there's a monologue, because then you're hearing the same. So John has a lot of monologues as our coach, and we're like, I'm getting inspired right now, and it's like, we've been inspired for the past 6 hours. You know what I mean? So I think it's tricky, but it's fun.
Now, you are an amazing actress that we've
thank
realized
you.
watching your show. How do
Thank
you
you.
relate to your character?
Ooh, okay. So Samantha is basically in the casting process. It was a very strange casting process, but Samantha was like not a full character. She was just this girl named Giggles who just kind of like chuckled, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do with her. And they've said this since, and they were like, we didn't know if she was gonna speak. We just wanted her to laugh, and like, but then we kind of just like, and I was like, okay. And they're like, and so I was like, oh, so like, what did it, like, cause you normally have a breakdown, and it's like bubbly, I'm sure you've seen one, like bubbly, da-da-da, like saying things about the person. Samantha didn't really have that. So they were like, in the end, they were like, we knew we wanted a fifth girl, and then we decided we wanted you, and then we just kind of went with what you did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was under all this pressure. I didn't even know. I guess that was good that I was unaware of it, or I would have freaked myself out. So I think that Samantha and I are pretty similar in a lot of ways, just because apparently they were going kind of off of how I was. Now, they wrote her to be a really big foodie, so I kind of am questioning that. I'm like, do I really love food that much that you could tell and needed to write that in? Because they're like, we basically went off of you. And I'm like, do I eat that much food in front of everybody? But no, so like her positivity and her bubbliness, I think they kind of said that they like saw in me or whatever. And also just like, I am kind of a giggly person, so I think that kind of made sense. And also, Samantha's definitely a very big like team player and wants the best for her friends. And I like to think I have those qualities as well. And I think being a team player is very important. So I make it a priority. So I think that we're very similar in a lot of ways. She's definitely, I think she's probably more outspoken or would like stand up for herself more than I would, which I could definitely work on and learn from her. But yeah, so I think there are definitely some similarities, but she's a little different sometimes too. Or she'll say something that I'm like, I wouldn't say it, but she's Samantha. So, you know, can't be exactly the same. You gotta act a little bit.
Yeah, Joselyne and I definitely noticed when we first introduced ourselves to you, like, yes, that's definitely Samantha.
That's so funny.
That's Samantha.
That is so funny.
We were talking about like, is she gonna talk as fast as Samantha does in the thing?
Okay, you guys think Samantha talks fast?
Yes, we think you talk fast.
That is so funny, because I have been aware of it, because I used to get that note. They'd be like, they thought you were nervous, you talked really fast. And not in this show, but in general. And I do talk fast, especially if I'm excited, sometimes if I'm nervous, but that's just who I am. But sometimes people can't understand me too well, so I definitely am actively always like, slow down a little bit. If I have a lot to say, I just get excited. But that's so funny you guys said that, because no one said that about Samantha yet, but I am a very fast talker, so yes. But I actively try to slow down, but yeah, that's very funny that you said that.
Now, with being so young and being part of such a big industry, what has that done to your personal life? We see you still get to hang out with your friends from time to time, but has it taken a big toll on you?
I would say it's just really tricky. I mean, my parents, whenever I talk to them about it, they're like, I mean, you chose this at 8 years old. And I'm like, I was 8 years old. But I definitely do agree. I did choose this, you know, my siblings and I did. So when I moved to California, I was homeschooled from 5th grade on. And I just danced primarily, like auditioned and danced and was homeschooled. So I wasn't around, like I was around some girls my age through dance or auditions. I would see people around my age, but I definitely think just I was riding off of having a few core friends more than like being at school and having a bunch of friends or people that you talk to regularly. And then, yeah, luckily I just found my people in LA. I found my people in Ohio. I wasn't even necessarily that close with the friends I have now in Ohio. I basically didn't know very well at all when I was actually growing up here, so that's kind of funny. But then I ended up going to school dances with them and hanging out with them a lot, and I really love them. So it's just kind of funny how things worked out. But yeah, I would say definitely was not the average experience, but I luckily did get to go to high school dances in the end. I weaseled my way into lots of stuff, and there was a school nearby me in California that my cousins went to, so I went to like their sporting events and stuff. So I felt a little more community with that. So I think that helped, but it definitely was not the average experience. I think about that sometimes, but also I'm like, I chose it, and also sometimes I think about it, I'm like, what if you never even acted? I'm like, I would probably just be like at Miami. I think I would have been a teacher, so I'm like, oh, that's so weird. Like, I can't even think about it. It's so different. Like, that is just a whole different life path, but sometimes I think about it because it's funny, but.
So has the full effect of being a Disney star actually set in yet?
Not at all. I don't know if it ever will. I mean, I don't know, and I don't know how extreme it will get, but I did have some girls come up to me at Ducky's yesterday, and that was the first time I'd had anyone come up to me about Big Shot. I'd had a couple people about little things in the past, which always threw me off, because I was like, how'd you even see that? But having them come up, I was like, oh my gosh, like we're really, you don't even, and that's the other thing, we started filming this in November of 2019, so I think just putting all this time into it, for the longest time we saw nothing come of it, because we're just still working on it. The season hasn't been released yet, all that stuff. So I think finally being like, oh wait, this means this girl in Troy, Ohio watched my show and now saw me on the street. Like, that's just like, it's just, you can't wrap your head around it. And even the rest of the cast, I sent them a picture. I was like, my first public recognition. They're like, wait, what? And it's just so fun. Even John's like, wait, what? Are those not your sisters? Are you sure they recognized you? I'm like, yes, they came up to me and said, are you in Big Shot? But it's just so funny because we don't realize what we're doing. I mean, you think John would, but like, he's still just like, that's la-da-da, and he's asking questions. And I'm like, no, it's just, you don't really realize who it's reaching and all that. So even the DMs, I'm like, oh wow, this is just like, you forget. Love from Argentina. I'm like, where's Argentina? I was homeschooled. Like, where are you in the world? No, but it's just definitely really cool, but I don't think it's kicked in. Again, I don't know if it ever will. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely been a lot of fun. And just, it gets me so excited when I hear someone say, I'm like, you watched it? Like, I'm just shocked.
And most of us will probably never, ever be able to call John Stamos just John. But you've been on set with him and Yvette Brown, and you were at the Corello world premiere.
I was.
So what's the most starstruck moment you've actually had?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I think John might have been it. Sorry, John Stamos might have been it. The first time we met him was at like an improper table read that he was like, I think we should do like a table read before the original, like the official one. I'm so proud of my acting ability on this because none of the girls knew I was a John fan, or like I might have mentioned it, but they had no idea the extent of it. John didn't know. So I was like, afterwards, I was like, guys, you have no idea. Like, I was sweating bullets, like, da-da-da-da. And they were like, wait, you're a fan? And I was like, okay, I played it really cool, apparently. But I think just, first off, if I had known John was a part of the show before I booked it, I definitely would never have been on the show because I psych myself out so much. I would have, like, been like, oh my gosh, it's Uncle Jesse. You'd be in scenes. He'd probably touch you. Like, oh my God, no. So anyway, I was like, I can't, like, I would have totally freaked myself out. So I think John was a big one. Goodness, I'm trying to think who else. I did a pilot that didn't go anywhere, but with Phil Lewis, who was Mr. Mosby in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I was a big fan of his. So I was like, Mr. Mosby. So that one was really cool. And I've worked with, I didn't really know who Matthew Broderick was at the time. So I was like, okay. Kristen Chenoweth, I didn't really, like, I was excited. And that's the thing. Normally it's like, my mom's like, you should be excited. This is really cool. And I'm like, okay. But like when you're little, the effect is so different. And I've worked with cool directors and all that stuff, but I just was like so little, I didn't really realize the extent of it. But I was personally probably most excited about that. Or when my sister was on Austin and Ally, I didn't necessarily watch the show, but I thought it was really cool to get to meet like those people. Yeah, I think a bunch of different, but probably, I think John's probably just the most exciting. I was just Full House is the first show I've ever watched every episode of, and I grew up on it. So I think that was just very, very exciting. And then, yeah, seeing people be like, seeing Andrea Barber, who's Kimmy Gibbler. I was her as Halloween one year, like when I was like 12. So I'm a diehard. My kid, I was like, I'm naming my firstborn Michelle. Like, you don't even understand the extent. So I think just seeing them like being like, oh, we're watching and loving it. I'm like, no way is Kimmy Gibbler watching me. Like it just all is so confusing and exciting.
All right, so seeing as how your career has taken off so fast and well, it took a while, but
yes, but I know your
point. And do you have any regrets about starting so young? Because most people have problems of being a child star.
Yes, so I have a friend who also started as young as I did, and we both talk about it now because this is she hasn't had a series regular yet either, or she did for a pilot that didn't go, but we talk about that a lot because we're like, we did start so young, and of course you're like, why couldn't this have happened a long time ago, da, da. But when we think about the kids we used to audition with and we know they're either really successful, a little bit messed up, or just don't act anymore because they don't like it anymore. And we're like, okay, actually, in a couple ways, we're pretty lucky it's hitting now that I'm 20 now, so it's like I'm an adult. I booked it when I was 18, and I'm like, I actually think I'm really glad because I just don't know where I'd be. I think it'd be a little bit more, I don't know, it's just hard to be exposed to all that when you're super young. Obviously, I had some experiences, doing an episode of a show or whatever, but I think having just like, I don't want to say the power, but like having all that behind it is definitely a stress. Also, I think being in the public eye super young, even now, I'm like, let me go see what I was posting at 16. Let me just like delete that. Like just because it's silly stuff that I'm like, I don't want that out there. But it's like, I think just the younger you are, the more open for mistakes to be made. Maybe not, I'm sure I'll still make mistakes. But you know what I mean? Like I think just it's definitely a different stress when you're younger. So I think I am in the end very glad it took as long as it did. I don't regret starting when I did just because I'm so like, everything happens for a reason. So I don't know why it took so long, but I believe it happened for a reason. So I think I had to start that young to get where I am today. So I won't say I regret it by any means, but definitely was a long process. Had to trust it.
I'm sure you had a lot of support from your family, what with your parents being so supportive and your siblings being into acting as well. Who do you think is your biggest supporter?
That's such a hard question. Oh no, is my family gonna see this? No. My mom would definitely say she's my biggest supporter, and I think she is, but I don't know.
All the articles say she is, too.
Yes, I think she probably is, but really, and my brother and sister, like, you know, people might be, so people, like my sister auditioned for the show I'm on and had a callback for it. So it's like, we're in competition occasionally, but I just think we have such a team vibe that it's like, they were so happy for me. I'm always so happy for them when we get to, you know, do things for them. So I just think all my immediate family, but even like my aunts, I have a lot of support, which is really, I feel so grateful for. And of course, you know, I've had people not supportive, where they'll be like, oh, like, are you still trying to act? Are you doing that dancing thing? And it's like, I dance, but I'm still working hard on the acting. So, you know, just as many doubters as supporters, but it definitely feels good to be where I'm at now. But yes, I think probably my mom, and yeah, but she just was also there for every audition and every tear I shed over roles I didn't get and all that stuff. So I think she would probably just be like the most supportive, yes.
All right, so we don't see a lot of representation of Ohio, except for like Christmas movies when somebody's driving through. But like to see someone like you from Tip City make it in Disney, it's like really inspiring for a lot of us. So what advice would you have for starting people that want to get into the industry but don't actually have the means to move out to LA?
Yes, and I do feel like it's tough for me to answer this. I did have a very lucky, easy start because my siblings were into it, and once you have all 3 kids in it, then it's like they all want to do it. So I think though, like my siblings did, they started acting locally, and I think just making sure, as long as the passion, the drive, the love is there, I feel like that's just double checking that. It's because sometimes you're like, acting sounds cool, and then it's like, okay, well now do your, you know, even if you're doing like a play or anything, it's like, do it for the 700th time. You might be like, I'm kind of done with this. And it's like, you can't get burnt out too quickly. So I think just making sure that the love, the passion is there, you're just so excited about it. If the fire is lit, then I think acting classes, and then my siblings did an expo thing in, I think it was Dallas, and that's how they got representation, was by going there and doing something. So I think something, and I'm sure there are some like that or managers or agents would come to that are more local. So if you're gonna take it, like, you know, take it seriously and get some sort of representation. And now even like Atlanta is a big, like a lot of things are cast out of Atlanta or filmed there. So I think you don't always have to end up in LA. So I think just, yeah, getting representation and seeing what's going on. And right now in Corona, everything's self-tapes. So I think there are a lot more opportunities for people if you can get representation, because they don't really care where you are. They're like, we'll get you wherever we need you to go. Because even though I'm sitting in LA recording it, you know, anyone can from anywhere in the world could be recording it, and it doesn't make a difference to them at the time. But like I said with the journey, I think just all the rejection you might get, and I'm sure there's rejection in other jobs too, but acting, it just feels like a million trillion rejections. But I think, like I said, just having trust in what you know you can do, and I definitely think it does help that I obviously had support behind me. I was very lucky in that, but I think that's when just having your own instincts kick in and be like, no, I can do it. And I think, I'm trying to think how that wraps back into the show too, but I feel like it is a very empowering show. When I watch it, I'm like, oh, but no, I think it's just exciting, and it just is all about, I don't know, I think just, yeah, really trusting your own ability. I think you almost have to be, I mean, I have days where I'm really confident and I have days where I'm very not confident, but I think those days where you do have the confidence, just take the chances. You do have to put yourself out there, especially in acting, more than you'd want to. And sometimes I'm like, ugh, you are a little fake there, Cricket. And I'm like, I wish I didn't have to, but it's kind of the business. It's all a game. And it's a very unfair game, as life is. But I think it's just like knowing when to play your cards. I think also just, you don't always see nice people make it the farthest. It just kind of depends. I'm not gonna say I'm a nice person. I like to think I try to be a nice person, but I think that's why Yvette Nicole Brown inspires me so much, because she's just so sweet and just wants the best genuinely for everyone. And I think that's the other thing. I don't know if that's good advice, but I think it is just so important to just like, if you have, like, be their biggest fan, support everybody, because it's just like, whatever's meant to be is gonna happen. If you know, if the role was gonna go to you, I don't think they would have wanted me. Even to someone who looks identical to me, it's like, no, but she was this, she was that, she acted this way. And I get more bummed when it's an acting thing where they're like, she acted this way. Cause I'm like, I could act that way if you asked me to. But when it's physical, it's like, okay, that's a little bit different. They're like, no, we needed someone who was shorter because the boy who's playing alongside her is shorter, whatever. But I think just having trust in your own self, putting a lot of time in, you know what I mean? I think you can't really be confident in acting if you haven't done any, like, I mean, maybe you're confident in your acting without doing anything, but you know, you gotta like work at it, and just, I think the more, and then, you know, classes, like I said, just building your confidence in it and trusting your ability. sometimes people will build you up, sometimes people will totally tear you down, and that's when you just have to be like, okay, well, there's nice stuff, that's cool, there's bad stuff, that's cool, but like I'm still just like focused. Don't let it build your ego too much or hurt your ego too much, because also one opinion, there are a trillion casting directors. One casting director doesn't like me, I'm like, it's kind of your loss. Like, okay, which is a little bit sassy, but I'm just like, I have to think of it that way for my own like self. I'm like, okay, but anyway, so I think just really trusting your own ability. You can all do it. So yeah, I think just really believing that and having the confidence, even if it's fake. There's definitely fake confidence all around in LA, but there's enough to go around. So we just kind of like, we're all fake confident, and then you do start to believe it though, Fake it till you make it, they say.
As a young actress on a Disney Plus show, and I'm sure it may have hit you a little when those girls came up to you at Ducky's, I think you know that a lot of young people look up to you. And what do you think that you want them to get most from you? What is your path to inspiring others?
That's a good question. I think it's tricky because nobody knows you. Like, unless I'm talking to you, you might get to know me. But I think it's really hard because of social media nowadays. Because sometimes I'm like, I want to sassily put this caption. And I'm like, but people don't know me, and they don't know that I'm kind of being sarcastic, or they don't know this. So it is really hard because that is representing who you are. Right. And I think definitely, like I said with the Yvette thing too, just like having some like people who are just genuinely kind people who, Yvette, if I asked her literally anything, she'd be like, I'll figure it out for you. I'll help you get there. I'll help you. I'll talk to that person. I'll whatever. Too. So I think just building each other up, or, I think that is one thing I would say I hope they take away from it. My friends look pretty. I'm going to post them. Like, they look so pretty. Look at my friends. These are beautiful people inside and out. I think just building each other. I hope that they can see that I genuinely love the people around me and want the best. You can't go out of your way and want the best for every person in your life, or you'll just be exhausted. But having those moments of just being a nice person, going out of your way. And I think, I try to spread positivity. I'm not always positive. It just depends on the day. But I think just like positivity, little acts of kindness definitely are important to me. Sometimes people know I do them, sometimes they don't, but I just think stuff like that is definitely very important. And even though you don't always see nice people, I feel like they tend to finish a little bit towards the end of the race, but I think it's just so important overall. And like I said, sorry, I won't shut up about it, Yvette, like, you just don't see that. I'm like baffled if you can't tell, because you just don't see someone with that status. And of course, our cast is very nice. We don't have anyone that I'm like, but this person. No, they're all super sweet, but she just like takes the cake and is so nice and has made it so far and still wants the best for everyone. And it's just like so refreshing to see. And so I love seeing that. So I'm like, I need to be more like that. I definitely admire that, and it inspires me. So I'm kind of stealing a little bit of that, adding my own twist, and then hoping that kind of inspires younger people. And I hope they see in the show how much friendship and teamwork and loving your teammates and wanting the best. Even your friends, I consider them my team, because I'm like, we're all winning. Like, That's the thing. You want your inner circle clapping for you, and you're clapping for your inner circle. So I think just really genuinely wanting that for everyone else. And if you don't want it for everyone else, then I think it's just maybe think about some things about yourself and be like, why do I feel the need to do that to other people, Why do I not want them to succeed? Am I jealous? Like, I think finding the root cause, sorting that out within yourself, and then reevaluating. But yeah, I just love people supporting other people. So it makes me really happy.
We really are seeing the team player in you, because it shows that you're not jealous of anything or anyone, and it seems like every time someone else does something great, you just take that and feed it into your own greatness, and I think that's an amazing thing to display to younger people.
Thank you. I have to say, it's definitely not totally struggle-less, but I think just really trying to I just have to remind myself all the time, I'm like, well, that's totally their journey, and my journey's like 3 lanes over here, and it's not intersecting, and my journey wasn't supposed to go like that. So I think just really remembering that. No one can be you, and you can't be anyone else. It's literally just like not possible. Sorry. Like, maybe you're lost, but totally your gain. So I think just remembering that, and, as much as I admire someone, or I'm like, that's cool that they did that, or, sometimes I'm like, you inspire me in that, or I'm going to take that with me that you do. You're just a mesh of whatever you want to be, or you're a mesh of little things from people, but you're not going to be able to be anyone else, and no one can be you for sure. So I think that just that helps me, but also, yeah, you can't. It's hard. I can't say I 1,000% genuinely want the best for every rival or person who's done me dirty. I'm working on it, but it's definitely harder. But I think just starting with the people who are closest to you, because it's like, I love you so much. Why would I not want you to be succeeding? You know what I mean? So yeah, I do think that that's very important. Thank you. I'm glad you picked up on that because I tried to do that.
Thank you, Miss Wampler. We are so glad that we could have you here today.
I'm so glad to meet you guys.
And we would like to humbly thank you for coming to our school to speak with us.
Of course. You guys did a great job with your questions. Thank you.